You don't lose a society by burning it down. You lose it by teaching people the wrong relationship with money. No alarms, no collapse, just quiet changes that feel normal at first. Most people think money is neutral, just a tool, just numbers. That belief is the first lie every broken system depends on. Because money doesn't just move goods, it trains behavior, it rewards obedience, it punishes resistance. And once a society accepts the wrong money rules, everything else bends around them. Morals, laws, faith, even what people believe is fair. Almost 1,000 years ago, one man saw this pattern forming long before modern banks, modern markets, or modern economics. His name was Al-Ghazali. Al-Ghazali wasn't warning about inflation charts or interest rates. He was warning about something deeper. He believed money could corrupt a civilization without anyone noticing. To understand why, you need to understand his world. The Islamic world of the 11th century was powerful, wealthy, and globally connected. Trade flowed across continents. Gold and silver moved constantly. Cities were full of merchants, scholars, and markets buzzing with activity. From the outside, it looked like success. But Al-Ghazali saw the cracks forming underneath. Money was changing its role. Instead of being a bridge between people, it was becoming a weapon. Instead of supporting trade, it was starting to control it. Wealthy elites began hoarding gold and silver. Speculation replaced real production. People started making money from money, not from value. And when that happens, systems don't just become unfair, they become fragile. Prices became unstable. Trust weakened. Ordinary people felt pressure they couldn't explain. Here's the dangerous part. No one thought the system was broken. Farmers blamed bad luck. Merchants blamed competition. Families blamed themselves. That's how broken systems protect themselves, by convincing people their pain is personal. Al-Ghazali rejected that lie. He argued that money has one job, to make exchange fair and efficient, not to sit idle, not to multiply itself, not to dominate society. When money stops circulating, markets suffocate, opportunity shrinks, inequality locks in place, the rich become untouchable, the poor become dependent. He used an image so simple it still works today. Money, he said, is like blood. It must keep moving. When blood pools in one place, the body doesn't feel pain immediately. It feels weak, slow, tired. Then parts of it start to die. This wasn't philosophy. It was observation. He watched rulers debase currency to hide mistakes. He saw lenders profit from desperation. He saw moral language used to justify extraction. And every time the result was the same. Markets slowed, trust collapsed, social tension rose. The system didn't fall all at once. It tightened. And people adapted, because adapting felt safer than questioning. Al-Ghazali understood something most people miss. A system doesn't need force to control you if it can make you depend on it. And once dependency is built, people defend the system themselves. That's when escape becomes almost impossible. And this is where his warning turns uncomfortable, because these systems don't disappear. They evolve, change the tools, change the language, change the century. The structure stays. And once you see it, you start noticing the same pressure patterns repeating again and again and again. Al-Ghazali didn't attack rulers directly. That would have been useless. Power doesn't respond to blame. It responds to incentives. So instead of arguing with kings, he studied behavior, what people actually did when money changed hands, and how small shifts slowly rewired an entire society. Imagine a merchant in Baghdad. He's not evil. He's not greedy. He's practical. He notices something simple. Lending gold earns more gold without travel, without storms, without risk. No caravans, no labor. Just time passing. At first it feels smart, responsible, even virtuous. Why risk goods when money itself now grows? But once enough people make the same smart choice, the market changes. Trade slows, craftsmanship loses value, farmers struggle to sell at fair prices, small traders quietly disappear, not because they failed, but because the rules no longer favor effort. Meanwhile, lenders rise. And here's the dangerous part. The system praises them for it. The lender is seen as disciplined, cautious, respectable. The worker, on the other hand, starts to look unstable, replaceable, and risky. Not because he works less, but because he doesn't control capital. This is how morality flips without anyone voting for it. Al-Ghazali watched this happen in real time. He saw societies move away from asking whether something created real value and toward asking whether it simply multiplied money. That shift sounds small, but it changes everything. Because when profit detaches from work, power detaches from responsibility. Debt becomes the center of gravity, and debt has no memory. It doesn't care about bad harvests, illness, or war. It doesn't adjust for hardship. It only counts time and demands payment. Miss once, and penalties begin. Miss again, and assets vanish. Stay behind long enough, and freedom itself becomes conditional. What Al-Ghazali understood was this. Money was never meant to behave like a product. It was designed to be a measure, a tool to compare effort and value. When the measure itself becomes something you trade and multiply, everything it touches distorts. Prices stop reflecting usefulness. They start reflecting leverage. Those closest to money gain control. Those furthest from it absorb pressure. Not suddenly, not dramatically. Slowly enough that people adapt instead of resist. And that's what makes the system dangerous. It doesn't feel cruel. It feels efficient. Al-Ghazali wasn't against wealth or trade. He wasn't calling for poverty or simplicity. His concern was concentration. When too much value pools at the top, the system loses flexibility. One shock is all it takes. A bad season, a tax increase, a political decision, and the pressure travels downward. The poor don't fall first. They're already there. The middle collapses. And once the middle collapses, systems don't reform. They tighten, rules harden, enforcement increases, control centralizes. And most people accept it because survival leaves little room for rebellion. Al-Ghazali saw this pattern repeat across empires. Different rulers, different eras, same structure. Money slows, debt spreads, morality becomes a justification instead of a guide. And the most unsettling part is this. People inside the system often defend it, because admitting it's broken means admitting their sacrifices were made under rules designed against them. That realization is harder to face than debt itself. Al-Ghazali didn't unsettle those in power by talking about money. He unsettled them because he understood exactly where unchecked systems always end. He saw a pattern that repeats across centuries, not tied to one empire, not tied to one religion, not tied to one era, a pattern built into incentives. Here's the core of it. When money stops being a tool for exchange and becomes a tool for control, society doesn't collapse. It rearranges, quietly, slowly, in a way that feels normal while it's happening. Al-Ghazali noticed that once lending became dominant, something subtle changed. People stopped asking, what is fair? They started asking, what is allowed? That shift matters more than it sounds, because systems don't survive by force. They survive by redefining responsibility. If a trader fails, it's his fault. If a farmer loses land, he mismanaged risk. If a worker sinks into debt, he made bad choices. The system stays clean. The blame moves downward. And once blame moves downward, extraction becomes invisible. Now pause for a second and look around your own life. You don't need names. You don't need headlines. Just look at the rules you live under. You're encouraged to borrow early. You are rewarded for leverage. You are praised for playing the game. At the same time, stability is treated like laziness. Saving feels pointless. Waiting feels expensive. If things go wrong, the explanation is always personal. You didn't plan well enough. You didn't adapt fast enough. You didn't educate yourself enough. The structure never apologizes. That is not accidental. That is design. Al-Ghazali warned that when money systems moralize outcomes, they become untouchable. Once debt is framed as a personal flaw instead of a structural feature, people stop questioning the rules. They internalize failure. And people who internalize failure don't revolt. They adjust. This is where his thinking becomes unsettling. He argued that the most powerful systems don't need to oppress openly. They just need to make survival conditional. Conditional on compliance. Conditional on constant participation. Conditional on staying liquid, flexible, and available. You're not forced to join, but opting out becomes impossible. Sound familiar? In his time, land was the trap. Lose it, and you lose independence. Today, the trap looks different, but the function is the same. Obligations stack, margins shrink, time horizons shorten. People stop planning years ahead. They plan month to month, sometimes week to week. That creates a population that is busy, anxious, and distracted, which is ideal for control. Al-Ghazali understood something most people miss. Systems don't need cruelty to work. They just need momentum. Once enough people depend on the system for food, shelter, and status, the system no longer needs to justify itself. It becomes reality, and reality doesn't feel optional. This is why he was obsessed with intention. Not intention as a moral lecture, but as a diagnostic tool. He asked one simple question that cuts through everything. Who does this system serve when things go wrong? Not when markets are good, not when trade flows, not when numbers go up, when pressure hits, when someone must lose. If the same group always absorbs the loss, the system is not neutral, it's directional. And direction tells you more than ideology ever will. He also warned that once money systems grow complex enough, people stop understanding them, but continue trusting them. That combination is lethal. Complexity creates distance. Distance creates dependence. Dependence creates obedience. Not because people are stupid, because they are tired. By the end of his work, Al-Ghazali wasn't predicting collapse. He was predicting normalization. A world where people feel trapped but can't explain why. Where rules feel heavy but unquestionable. Where survival requires constant motion. And here's the part that should make you pause. He believed this phase lasts longer than anyone expects. Because nothing breaks. Life just gets narrower. And that narrowing becomes the new normal. By the time a system like this reaches its final phase, most people stop asking big questions. Not because they don't care, but because the cost of asking becomes too high. Al-Ghazali understood this ending clearly. He didn't imagine riots in the streets. He didn't predict sudden collapse. He saw something quieter: acceptance. When a system controls survival, people don't rebel against it. They optimize inside it. They learn how to survive the rules instead of challenging them. That's the real endgame. At this stage, morality becomes private, not structural. People still believe in right and wrong, but only in their personal lives. The system itself is treated like weather. Unfair? Maybe. Changeable? No. Al-Ghazali warned that once money systems reach this point, they stop needing legitimacy. They don't need to explain themselves. They don't need to persuade. They just continue, because people have adapted their lives around them. Think about what that looks like. People don't ask whether the system is fair. They ask how to survive it. They don't ask who benefits. They ask how to position themselves. They don't ask whether the rules make sense. They ask how to avoid breaking them. That shift marks the true victory of the system. Not domination, normalization. In his time, this meant families losing land slowly, generation by generation. Children growing up already dependent, debt no longer feeling like a crisis, but like a fact of life. Freedom didn't disappear overnight. It thinned. Options narrowed. Risk became dangerous. Mistakes became permanent. And once mistakes become permanent, people stop experimenting. They stop resisting. They stop imagining alternatives. That's why Al-Ghazali believed moral clarity mattered more than technical fixes. He didn't think you could out-engineer a corrupt incentive system. You had to see it clearly first, because awareness is the only thing that interrupts momentum. He wasn't telling people to destroy money. He wasn't calling for chaos. He was warning that systems built only on efficiency will always sacrifice people quietly, and systems built only on profit will always rewrite morality to protect themselves. Here's the uncomfortable truth his work leaves us with. These systems don't collapse when people suffer. They collapse when people stop believing they're normal. Until then, they persist, they adapt, they rename themselves, they modernize. But the core logic stays the same. Value flows upward, risk flows downward. Responsibility is individualized. Power remains abstract. Al-Ghazali's real message wasn't about his time. It was about pattern recognition. Once you see the pattern, you stop being surprised by outcomes. You understand why prosperity feels fragile, why pressure keeps rising, why effort doesn't guarantee security, and why systems always ask more from those with the least leverage. This isn't about pessimism. It's about orientation. When you understand how these systems work, you stop waiting for collapse. You stop waiting for rescue. You stop trusting reassurances meant to calm, not inform. You start asking better questions. Who absorbs the loss? Who writes the rules? Who benefits when nothing breaks? Those questions don't make you powerful overnight. They make you harder to control. And that, Al-Ghazali believed, was the beginning of real freedom. If this video gave you a new way to see money, power, and morality, hit like. It helps this kind of content reach more people, and subscribe if you want more calm, honest breakdowns of how systems actually work, past and present. Because the biggest shifts don't happen loudly, they happen quietly, and only the people paying attention notice them in time.